Hello World Doll Day friends, this is Michael Kanadas, and we are now at our final performance for you during World Doll Day celebration. During this, the creation of this event at the Grovian Doll Museum, we introduced two international programs for non-English speaking attendees of World Doll Day. One was a Russian language program. Whenever at the Grovian, whenever we're having a group and I feel that we can connect with a particular group in their area of interest, whether it be what they collect or culturally. So I thought for the Russian tour, I would bring some items together from the collection that had a connection with the history of Russia and the world. And when I did that with Svetlana, other people that were in the building said, hey, what about us? We want to know what that program was about. So we decided that we would do this as the final program, because World Doll Day is not just about the concept of a pretty doll. Dolls represent so much. An old doll can be the most perfect representation of a costume that any museum can have. Because remember, in a costume museum, they might have the dress, they might have the hat, but they don't have the underclothes, they don't have the wig, they don't have the jewelry, they don't have the shoes, they don't have the stockings. Dolls do that. Dolls also can represent history. They can be a witness to history. So with that being said, we are going to talk about our dolls that have a connection to Russia. And I'm going to start with the Empress Eugenia. Not that has a connection, but she made a quote that I think is so important. And her quote was, "Life is dramatic enough. It doesn't need to be dramatized." In other words, just give it to me straight up. So this is our portrait of Empress Eugenie, the Empress of France. Why she comes into the story: she was the cousin of Matilde Bonaparte. Matilde Bonaparte is a very special individual. Without her, she was born in Corsica, and her father was the brother of Napoleon, the great Napoleon Bonaparte. She was raised by her grandmother, Napoleon's father, and her father was a bit of a scoundrel, and he basically married her off to the highest bidder, to Prince Demidov, and Prince Anatole Demidov, who was the wealthiest man in Russia. Just to give you an idea, Matilde Bonaparte is a contemporary of Queen Victoria. They're about the same age and almost lived about the same lifespan. The marriage was a disaster. He was an abusive man, and he was a Napoleon collector. He collected Napoleonic artifacts. And he made Matilde Bonaparte, as a young woman and a child, was absolutely enchanting. She could work a room, and the Tsar of Russia adored her. So her husband made a fatal mistake. He slapped her across the face in the middle of a reception in front of the Tsar. The Tsar ordered the divorce, gave her a settlement from her husband of the equivalent of 250,000 francs per year for life. She managed to get all of her jewels together, and she got out of there, and she went to the place that she wanted to go to, which was Paris. She ended up in Paris, and her cousin Louis Bonaparte was there, and he had political ambitions, and she had political ambitions. So she pawned all of her jewelry, and she ran his political campaign. He was elected the President of the Republic, and then soon after declared himself in a coup emperor. So he became the Emperor of France, and Matilde Bonaparte became the imperial princess. So what does that have to do with dolls? Well, oh, by the way, I forgot to show you this marvelous likeness we have of Napoleon III. If it were really like him, it would have a little bit of longer goatee, but you know, if it protruded out that far, they'd never get it out of a mold. But this is, I think, really on par with this portrait. Just a magnificent thing. And of course, propaganda. He was a small man. They've made this head so much bigger than he ever was. Now, we were very fortunate to buy this doll, and we've written articles about it, and we will have a downloadable for you. And what it says in Italian, because that would be her language that she would use around the house, and it says, a doll that belonged to Matilde Bonaparte. So this was the box that this doll came in, and this was the doll. Now, when this doll was available, she was an adult. She was a full-on adult. She was friends with all of the great writers and artists of the day. She supported them. She was their benefactress. And there's at least 3 accounts of her shopping excursions, and she loved to buy toys, and she loved to buy all kinds of goodies. So we could say that she was a doll girl. But when you read about her personality, this is someone of great strength. So it's kind of the flip side of all of us. We could be very strong, but yet still have that child side. Now, Matilde Bonaparte, my learning about her opened up an understanding for me of the Third Empire that I don't think I would have really had without her. So this doll is very representative of so much. Now, imagine this was a character. Everyone in Paris and everyone in France knew her. Her popularity was on par with Princess Diana, even to the point that when she died after living a very nice long life, she had a funeral on par with Princess Diana. Now time goes by and people forget. So this is very much, I would say, a doll. It's a doll to play with. Here we have a doll, and this is created by Emmanuel Cruchet. And in my opinion, this is a portrait doll of Matilde. Sometimes you'll see these dressed as a man because there's a slight manly look to the face. It's also a face that looks exactly like Napoleon Bonaparte if you feminized it. It is a female, and I believe that this is a portrait of Matilde Bonaparte. And it has some of the most amazing painted eyes I've ever seen. It's got mauve shadow. Why would you put mauve shadow on a male doll? And where are the facial features? Painted hair, you know, goatee, sideburns, mustache. It is a very specific piece. And if you catch her right at the time that this doll would have been created, you'll see the likeness. Of course, she lived a long time, so you have the aging process. We don't all look the same way we used to. She's very special to us. It's a very unique body. It shouldn't actually have clothes on it, but that wouldn't be proper. And in its head, it has the Marie Cruchet papers. It came with them in the head. I have left them in the head. I'm not going to take them out because it's very easy for those to be left. But I will just explain what the body looks like. It is a wood composition. It's got everything in it. Wood composition, metal, but it looks like she's wearing a leotard. But in all of that, there's complete articulation. It's very, very unique. And she's one of the few dolls other than Rose Percy that has real jewelry. Those are real diamonds, and those are real pearls, and that's real gold. So it's very special. You see that here, and you can see that in her tiara. Matilde Bonaparte is really very special in the world of art. In the 18 years of her participation in the Second Empire, the cultural activity in France, the Louvre, etc., exploded. And for many of you that have been to Paris, the relationship that France and Russia had was formed during the time of Matilde Bonaparte. And that's why you see gifts like the Alexander Bridge, one of the most beautiful bridges in the world that was a gift from Russia to France. So the next thing we're going to look at is in chronological order. Oh, it would be this one. So I know that when you give of yourself, you get back. So Svetlana was here, and I told her the story of this doll, which this doll is the family doll of Leontine Romer's only daughter, Matilde. Again, we have another Matilde. And it came through us with all of very interesting paperwork, including the history of the time that the Romer family were living in Russia. Historically, researchers have said that Leontine Romer had a very imperial outlook on life. Well, it's not surprising. She was educated with Romanov princesses. Her father was the tutor, and she and her sister were in the classroom with them. So she grew up in a world of being a princess and all of that. So what was very interesting about Svetlana's take, she of course enjoyed the fact that the Russian connection, but then she looked at her wardrobe and she said, which I didn't catch, she said, Russian, 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 and here's the one that really got me because I was a little slow on the draw. This is a classic Romer blouse. Usually, almost always goes on a striped skirt. It didn't even occur to me that this is really a Cossack shirt. So it's a man's shirt that's been feminized with decoration. How did I not see it over all these years of doing this? But it's clear to see. You know, you live somewhere, you pick up inspiration from the place you live, and these would be in the Romer lady's memory bank of a style, and this may have been very, very avant-garde in the 1860s in Paris, very exotic, and look at the detail here. Just a little extra thing, just this little bit, and how it's got a little gather and comes around. Very, very interesting. Now, I will be very honest, I've never examined a real Cossack shirt, but I guess we have one in miniature here. So that was a wonderful thing to learn from sharing with someone internationally. I know Ann Coleman had a question for Svetlana. Svetlana put it in her group, and in an hour, halfway around the world, the information came back. And that's the great thing about World Doll Day and sharing. So the next thing chronologically that we will look at is one of our favorites. Oops, don't want to lose him. Well, here, we'll just go to her, if we can get her to there. This is a doll that we call Olga's Doll. This came to us via France, and in 1889, a Russian family purchased her at the Exposition Universelle. Now, it could be, I'm attributing the mold to Montanari, but it could have actually been the manufacturer, could have been Lucy Peck. because it's the pinkish that Lucy Peck is known for. Now that makes it confusing, but Lucy Peck bought molds from Montanari. Remember that when these dolls were made, the most prized thing in manufacturing were the molds. The mold maker was the number one on the food chain, and then the molds were the most important. So this was bought in 1889 by a Russian family. And we know that, I'm not saying it's a Romanov or anything like that. I've kind of deduced that it was probably a high-end merchant family, because the family, I think, got wind of the revolution that happened, practically another generation. And they managed to have the skill set to have all of their personal possessions, their furniture, their paintings, their household items, like this doll, because it would go under household items, shipped out. Some of the noble families did that, not many. So it says to me that this was some family with some kind of reality of how to arrange things and get things done, and they preserved their possessions, they preserved their wealth. This doll was with Olga's family all until we are basically the second owner of this doll. So there's a lot of history of turmoil, etc. in Olga's doll. Now, we'd like to know more about her, but one of the problems with Europeans is they are very hesitant to share these kinds of information. They have a different tax setup than we do in this country, and but we do know, we have the box, we know where she came from, we know that it belonged to a girl named Olga. Lastly, one of the things that I brought for Svetlana's tour, and before I put it on the table, I asked, how do you feel about this? Because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or cause a political problem. And I said, how do you feel about us sharing our paper mache head of Czar Nicholas? And she said, well, he's been canonized by the Russian Orthodox Church. And I said, so that's okay? And she said, oh, that's really okay. What is really interesting about this piece is, besides how magnificent it is, the eyes are unbelievable. They're very, very hypnotic. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy because he was an individual that was born in a hereditary position, like the Queen of England. She didn't choose it. She was born to it. The Queen of England is equipped for it. He was not. So this is a really kind of a tragic part of Russian history, the murder of the Romanov family. But we feel that we're very fortunate to have this, because there's very few of these. This is not like a Fabergé egg encrusted with diamonds. This is a paper mache head that could easily been used in a lot of terrible ways, but somehow it survived. And at some point, I'm going to go to the police department and ask them if they have a forensic person that could brighten that up so we can read what it says on the bottom. Well, this was a little bit of a taste of things that we have in the museum that have a connection with Russia. We would like to have more items, things like the Russian tea servers that were very, very popular at the same time as the Alexander Bridge, because you had this great unity of two nations. When Svetlana was doing her talk for her Russian audience, which I would be a little bird in the background and give her a little help if she needed it, I really realized that I totally understood everything she was saying, because in the world of dolls are an international language. When the hands start moving and the eyes, I understood exactly what she's saying. And I think that's really The whole meaning of World Doll Day is that we take this moment to set everything aside, and it's only about dolls. So I hope you've enjoyed this experience as much as we have, putting it together for all of you. And we have so much to be thankful for with our fantastic speakers, our behind the scene people like Samantha Lewis and Barbara Porter, and of course we couldn't do it without David Robinson, who keeps the Army moving with food. So it's now the time that we give you a doll. So if you go to our link for the downloadables, it will be there for you, and we will see you doll friends somewhere soon. Bye-bye.